The scissors made a satisfying snip as I trimmed the stem of a white peony, the sound sharp in the quiet morning of my flower shop. Water dripped from the cut end onto the wooden counter, each drop marking time in the rhythm I'd fallen into over the past 6 years of running Bloom and Thorn. My fingers moved automatically, stripping leaves, checking for thorns, arranging stems in the glass vase that would sit in Mrs. Chen's foyer by noon. Outside, rain had started again. The 3rd day in a row. April in the city meant unpredictable weather. But this felt different. Heavier. Like the sky itself was holding its breath. I glanced at the brown paper bag sitting on the edge of my work table, the one I'd carried back from the clinic 40 minutes ago. Inside, folded twice, was the ultrasound print. 6 weeks. The technician had smiled when she'd said it, congratulations in her voice, as if she couldn't see that I'd arrived alone, that my hands had been shaking when I'd filled out the forms. The bell above the door chimed, and I looked up to see my best friend Lucia bursting in, her umbrella dripping all over the tile floor. Behind her came Sophia and Marie, the 3 of them looking like they'd run the entire 2 blocks from the coffee shop. "Serena," Lucia panted, shoving a newspaper into my hands. "You need to see this." The headline was in bold, "Valente Russo wedding tomorrow. 2 families unite in historic Italian ceremony." Below it, a photo. Him, the man from 6 weeks ago. The one who'd appeared in my shop during a thunderstorm at closing time, drenched and asking for roses. The one whose name I'd never learned, whose number I'd never gotten, whose face I'd tried and failed to forget every single day since. Nico Valente, 30 years old, head of the Valente crime family, marrying Isabella Russo, daughter of the rival Russo clan, in a union meant to end decades of bloodshed. My vision tunneled. The edges of the newspaper blurred. "Serena, are you okay? You look pale." Sophia's hand touched my shoulder. I set the paper down carefully, my fingers numb. Then I reached for the brown bag, pulled out the ultrasound, and stared at it. The tiny bean-shaped shadow. 6 weeks. 1 night. One stranger who wasn't a stranger at all, but a man whose wedding was tomorrow. "What is that?" Marie leaned closer, then gasped. "Oh my God. Serena, is that—" I didn't answer. Instead, I picked up the scissors I'd been using on the peonies. My hands didn't shake this time. They were steady as I cut through the ultrasound image, once, twice, 3 times, until it was nothing but confetti scattered across the counter between the flower stems and ribbon spools. "Serena!" Lucia grabbed my wrist. "What are you doing?" "What I should have done the moment I left that clinic," I said, my voice flat. "Forgetting." I turned away from them, from the newspaper photo of him in a tuxedo, from the pieces of the ultrasound that looked like snow among the roses. My chest felt tight, like someone had wrapped wire around my ribs and was pulling. "You can't just—" Sophia started. "Watch me." I walked to the back room, the storage area where I kept extra vases and ribbon and the industrial sink I used for washing buckets. The door had a lock. I turned it, sealing myself in, and then I let myself break. The sobs came hard and fast, ripping out of me in a way they hadn't even at the clinic. Because this was different. This wasn't just being pregnant and alone. This was being pregnant by a man who belonged to someone else, who lived in a world I didn't even understand, who was getting married tomorrow to seal a peace treaty like this was the 15th century and not the modern world. I pressed my forehead against the cool metal of the sink, trying to breathe through the tears. 6 weeks ago, he'd stood in my shop with water dripping from his dark hair, his gray eyes intense as he'd asked for red roses. "For someone special?" I'd asked, and he'd said, "For myself. Tonight. Just tonight." We'd talked while I'd made the arrangement, about flowers and rain and the way the city looked when it was washed clean. He'd helped me close up, and then the storm had gotten worse, and I'd offered him tea while we waited it out. One thing had led to another. One touch. One kiss. One night that I'd replayed 1,000 times since. He'd been gone by morning. No note, no number. Just the memory of his hands and his voice, and the way he looked at me like I was the only thing in the world that mattered. Apparently I wasn't. A knock on the door. "Serena, please, let us in." I wiped my face with the back of my hand, took a shaky breath, and opened the door. Lucia's eyes were red too. "I'm so sorry." "Don't be. I'm fine." "You're clearly not fine." "I will be." I walked past them back to the main shop floor, to the counter where the pieces of ultrasound still lay among the flowers. I gathered them up, every single scrap, and dropped them in the trash bin under the register. "I have orders to fill. Mrs. Chen needs her arrangement by noon." Marie exchanged a look with Sophia. "Maybe you should close the shop today. Take some time." I said I'm fine. The bell chimed again. This time it wasn't my friends arriving. It was him. Nico Valente stepped into my flower shop, looking exactly like he had in the newspaper photo. Tailored black suit, white shirt, that same intensity in his gray eyes that had made me forget every rational thought 6 weeks ago. Behind him stood 2 men in similar suits, clearly security. They remained by the door while he approached the counter. My friends went silent. Everyone in the city knew what the Valente name meant, what he was. "I'm here to pick up the bridal bouquet," he said, his voice exactly as I remembered it. Deep, smooth, with the faint trace of an Italian accent that became more pronounced on certain words. "Valente order." I stared at him. He stared back, and I watched recognition dawn in his eyes the same moment my heart cracked open all over again. "Serena," my name on his lips, like he'd thought about it, like he'd remembered. "Your bouquet isn't ready," I lied, even though it was sitting in the cooler, white roses and orange blossoms, traditional Italian wedding flowers. "Come back tomorrow." "It was supposed to be ready today. The wedding is tomorrow." "Then I guess your bride will have to carry grocery store carnations." The bitterness in my voice was sharp enough to cut. "The door is over there. I have work to do." His jaw tightened. Behind me, I heard Sophia's sharp intake of breath. People didn't talk to Nico Valente like that. People didn't dismiss him. But I wasn't people. I was the woman carrying his child while he prepared to marry someone else. His gaze dropped to the counter, to the ribbon and stems and the few remaining scraps of paper I'd missed when cleaning up. I watched his hand reach out, watched him pick up one of the pieces. It was small, just a corner, but it had part of the date, part of my name printed at the top. He went very still. Then he picked up another piece, and another. His fingers moved quickly, gathering every scrap, fitting them together like a puzzle on the glass countertop. "No," I said, reaching to stop him. "Don't." But it was too late. He'd assembled enough pieces to see what it was. An ultrasound image. 6 weeks gestational age. Patient name. Serena Blackwell. The silence in the shop was suffocating. Lucia grabbed Sophia's arm. Marie had gone pale. The 2 security guards by the door stood frozen, clearly not sure what to do. Nico's eyes lifted to mine. 6 weeks. I said your bouquet isn't ready. Leave. 6 weeks, he repeated, his voice dropping lower. That's exactly... I know when it was. My hands were shaking now, but I kept them flat on the counter. And I know you're getting married tomorrow, so whatever you think this means, it doesn't. It's handled. It's none of your business. The door is that way. He looked down at the assembled pieces again, at my name, at the date, at the tiny shadow that would have shown him everything if I hadn't destroyed it. You tore it up. Very observant. Why? The question cracked something open in my chest. Because you're marrying someone else tomorrow. Because you spent one night with me and disappeared. Because this... I gestured at my still flat stomach, at the pieces of ultrasound, at the space between us. Doesn't fit into your plans. Plans change. Not yours. Not tomorrow. Not for a family alliance and a peace treaty and whatever else that wedding means. I forced myself to breathe. I won't ruin that. I won't be the scandal. I'll handle this myself. His hand shot out, gripping my wrist. Not hard, but firm enough to stop me from pulling away. The baby. Is it mine? Every person in that shop held their breath. I looked him dead in the eye and said, "My uterus is none of your damn business. Let go of me." Answer the question. I don't owe you anything. You came for a bouquet. It's in the cooler. Take it and get out of my shop. Something shifted in his expression. Not anger. Something colder. More calculated. He released my wrist and walked toward the door, his security guard stepping aside. I thought he was leaving, thought I'd won this battle. But he stopped in the doorway, turned back, and said 3 words that would change everything. Cancel the wedding. Then he pulled out his phone, made a call, and I heard him say in Italian, "Papa, we need to talk, now." He left. The door chimed. The rain kept falling, and I stood there among my flowers, holding my wrist where his fingers had been, knowing that I'd just started a war I had no idea how to fight. "Serena," Lucia whispered. What the hell just happened? I didn't answer, because I didn't know. I only knew that the pieces of ultrasound were still on my counter, reassembled, and that somewhere in the city, Nico Valente was making decisions that would destroy whatever fragile piece his wedding tomorrow was supposed to create. All because of one night, one storm, one choice, and a baby neither of us had planned for. The next morning, I stood in my shop at dawn, arranging white roses that were meant for a wedding that was no longer happening. The newspaper had confirmed it 3 hours ago. Valente Russo wedding cancelled. No explanation given. Both families refusing comment. My phone had been ringing since midnight. Unknown numbers. Messages from reporters who'd somehow gotten my information. I'd turned it off after the 15th call. The morning light filtered through the front windows, catching the water droplets still clinging to the glass from last night's rain. I trimmed another stem, the scissors precise, despite the exhaustion weighing down my limbs. I hadn't slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw his face when he'd assembled those ultrasound pieces. The bell chimed. I looked up to find an older man in an immaculate gray suit standing in my doorway. Silver hair, sharp eyes, the kind of presence that made the air feel thinner. Behind him stood 4 men in black, not asking, just there. Serena Blackwell. Not a question. I'm Antonio Valente, Nico's father. I set down the scissors carefully. The shop doesn't open until 9. This isn't about flowers. He walked further in, his gaze sweeping across the counter, stopping on the reassembled ultrasound pieces I'd left there last night. I'd been unable to throw them away a second time. My son canceled a wedding that took 3 years to negotiate, a wedding that would have ended a blood feud spanning 4 decades. Do you know what that means? That he made a choice. That he made a catastrophically stupid choice. Antonio's voice was hard. The Russos are demanding retribution. My own family is calling him a disgrace. All because of this. He gestured at the ultrasound pieces. So I need to know. Is it true? Are you carrying my grandchild? The word grandchild hit differently than baby had. This wasn't just about Nico and me anymore. This was about families and legacies and things I didn't understand. I don't owe you answers. You owe my family the truth. Because right now, you're at the center of a situation that could get people killed. He leaned against the counter. So I'll ask again. Is that baby my son's? I looked at this man who'd built an empire on violence and loyalty, whose son had spent one night with me and then walked away to marry someone else. And I made a choice. Yes. The word hung in the air between us. Antonio nodded slowly, like he'd been expecting it but needed confirmation. How far along? 6 weeks. And you weren't going to tell him. He was getting married. What was I supposed to do? Show up at the church with an ultrasound and ruin his big day? The bitterness leaked through. I was handling it myself. By tearing up the evidence and throwing it away. By protecting everyone involved. Something that might have been respect flickered in his eyes. You have more sense than my son does. Unfortunately, he's already blown everything up. So protection is no longer an option. He pulled out his phone, made a call. Nico, get to the flower shop, now. I don't want... What you want stopped mattering when you let him into your bed. Antonio's voice was blunt. You're carrying a Valente. That means your family now, whether you like it or not. 10 minutes later, Nico walked in. He looked like he hadn't slept either. Same suit as yesterday, but rumpled now. Hair disheveled like he'd been running his hands through it. Those gray eyes found mine immediately. You canceled the wedding, I said. I did. You started a war. I did. Because of a baby you didn't even know existed until yesterday. He moved closer, and I saw something in his expression I hadn't seen before. Not the smooth charm from that first night. Not the cold calculation from yesterday. Something raw. Because of you. Don't. I stepped back. Don't make this about me. This is about responsibility and timing, and it's about the fact that I haven't been able to stop thinking about you since that night. His voice was low, intense. It's about the fact that I was supposed to marry Isabella tomorrow, and all I could think about was how wrong it felt. How I was choosing duty over... He stopped. And then I walked into your shop yesterday and saw you again. And then I saw those pieces, and everything became clear. Clear? I laughed, the sound bitter. Your family is at war. The Russos want blood. And you think this is clear? Clearer than it's been in 3 years. Antonio made a sound of disgust. While you two figure out your feelings, I need to manage the fallout. Serena, you're moving. Excuse me? Your address is public record. The Russos know who you are. They know about the baby. You're not safe here. I'm not going anywhere. You're 8 blocks from Russo territory. You have no security, no protection, and you're carrying my grandchild. Antonio's voice was final. Pack what you need. You're moving to a secure location until we sort this out. I looked at Nico. Did you know about this? I called him this morning to tell him about the baby. He made the security call. So you just decided my life for me, both of you, without asking. Would you have agreed if we'd asked? Antonio raised an eyebrow. No. Then this saves time. The bell chimed again. This time it was Lucia, carrying coffee and pastries, clearly thinking I needed support after yesterday's disaster. She froze when she saw Antonio and his guards. Serena? Her voice was small. It's okay. I moved between her and the men. Just some unexpected complications. Complications? Lucia's eyes widened. Are they threatening you? They're protecting her, Nico said. From what? From the consequences of their son's decisions, I said flatly. I turned back to Antonio. I'm not moving. I'm not leaving my shop. I'm not becoming some kept woman in a fortress while you fight your wars. I'll handle this pregnancy myself. I've been alone my whole life. This doesn't change anything. Antonio studied me for a long moment. Then he smiled. It wasn't warm. You have spirit. Good. You'll need it. He gestured to his men. Make sure she gets to work safely. Watch the shop. No one in or out without clearance. You can't just station guards at my flower shop. Already done. He headed for the door. Nico, fix this. You made this mess. You clean it up. Then he was gone, leaving me alone with his son and 4 security guards who were now apparently permanent fixtures. Lucia grabbed my arm. What the hell is happening? I'm pregnant. He's the father. And he just started a mob war over it. Oh my God. She sank onto the stool behind the counter. Oh my God. Serena, what are you going to do? I looked at Nico, who was watching me with an intensity that made my skin feel too tight. I'm going to make flower arrangements. Because that's my job. That's my life. And I'm not letting anyone take that from me. For the next 3 weeks, that's exactly what I did. Every morning, I came to my shop at dawn. Every morning, Nico's security was already there. Every day, I made bouquets and arrangements and tried to pretend my life wasn't completely upended. And every evening, Nico showed up, not to pressure me, not to make demands. He just appeared at closing time and helped me clean up, swept the floor, washed the buckets, carried the heavy bags of soil I couldn't manage anymore. I didn't thank him. I didn't encourage him. I gave him the same sharp-edged sarcasm I'd perfected over years of dealing with difficult customers. Oh, look, the runaway groom is back, I'd say when he walked in. What alliance did you destroy today? Just the one, he'd reply, taking the broom from my hand without asking. How was your day? Better before you showed up. But he kept coming. And despite myself, despite everything, I started expecting him. Started noticing when he was 5 minutes late. Started saving him the last coffee from the pot I made in the afternoon. 6 weeks after the canceled wedding I was showing. Not much. Just enough that my regular clothes didn't fit right. I'd started wearing loose dresses that hid the small bump. Nico noticed. You need maternity clothes, he said one evening, after we'd closed up. I have clothes. You have dresses 2 sizes too big. There's a difference. And you're an expert on women's fashion now? My sister just had a baby. I know what pregnancy looks like. He paused. Let me take you shopping. No. Serena? I said no. I don't need your money. I don't need your help. I'm doing fine on my own. He was quiet for a moment, and then he said, Why do you hate me? The question caught me off guard. I don't hate you. You barely look at me. You won't let me help with anything. You act like I'm some kind of punishment you have to endure. His voice was careful, controlled. If it's about the wedding, it's not about the wedding. The words came out sharper than I intended. It's about the fact that you spent one night with me and then disappeared. No note, no number, nothing. And then I find out I'm pregnant. And the same day I see your face in the paper because you're marrying someone else. Do you know what that felt like? He moved closer. I looked for you. What? After that night, I came back to the shop, multiple times. But you were never here. And I didn't know your last name. I only knew Serena and that you owned a flower shop. There are 14 flower shops in this city. I stared at him. You looked for me? For weeks. And then my father arranged the marriage to Isabella, and I thought... He stopped. I thought maybe it was better if I didn't find you, that you deserved someone without my life, my complications. So you were going to marry her. I was going to do my duty, protect my family, make peace. He laughed, but there was no humor in it. And then I walked into your shop to pick up her wedding bouquet and saw you again, and realized I'd been fooling myself. There was no duty. There was only you. The words hung between us. Outside, rain had started again, tapping against the windows like it had that first night. "You still could have told me," I said quietly. "Yesterday, when you saw the ultrasound, you could have explained instead of just making decisions. Would you have listened? I don't know, but I deserved the chance to choose." He nodded slowly. "You're right. I'm sorry. I'd been expecting a lot of things, justifications, explanations, not an apology. The security stays," he added. "That's non-negotiable. The Russos are still looking for leverage, and you're it. But everything else, how much you see me when I'm here, what I help with, that's your choice." It was the first time anyone had given me a choice in weeks. "Okay," I said finally. "Okay? You can come at closing time. You can help clean up. But you can't buy me things, and you can't make decisions for me. And if I tell you to leave, you leave. Those are my terms. Deal." He held out his hand. I looked at it for a long moment. Then I shook it. His palm was warm against mine, calloused in a way that surprised me. Not the soft hands of someone who'd never worked. These were hands that knew labor, that knew struggle. "One more thing," I said. "What?" "Stop looking at me like that." "Like what?" "Like I'm something precious you're afraid to break. I'm not fragile, I'm just pregnant. There's a difference." A smile tugged at his mouth, the first real one I'd seen from him. Noted. That night, after he left, I stood in my shop and realized something had shifted. Not forgiveness, not yet, but maybe the beginning of something. 3 months later, I was 7 months pregnant, and my ankles had disappeared. I stood at the counter, arranging a bouquet for a customer, when Nico walked in carrying a box. "What's that?" I asked, eyeing it suspiciously. "A chair." "I have chairs." "You have a stool that's too low for your back. This is an ergonomic chair designed for pregnant women." He set the box down. "Before you argue, I already know all your objections. Yes, I'm buying you something. No, you can't stop me. This isn't about control. It's about the fact that watching you stand for 8 hours straight makes me want to commit violence." I blinked at him. That's the worst sales pitch I've ever heard. "Is it working?" Despite myself, I laughed. "Fine, you can set up the chair, but this doesn't mean... It doesn't mean anything except that you'll be more comfortable. I know." He started unpacking it. "Also, my sister wants to meet you." "Why?" "Because I talk about you constantly, and she's worried I've lost my mind." He glanced up. "She's actually really nice. No pressure. Just coffee. She's bringing her baby." I should have said no. Should have kept these boundaries clear. But 3 months of Nico showing up every evening, of slowly getting used to his presence, had worn down my defenses. "Okay." His face lit up in a way that made my chest tight. "Yeah?" "1 coffee, that's it. 1 coffee." He paused. "Thank you." That weekend I met Nico's sister Gabriella in a cafe near my shop. She was warm and funny and completely overwhelming in the best way. Her baby, a chubby 6-month-old named Luca, spit up on my dress within 5 minutes. "Oh God, I'm so sorry." Gabriella grabbed napkins. "It's fine, I work with plants. This isn't even close to the worst thing that's been on this dress." She laughed, and I found myself laughing too. And just like that, I had a friend. Over the next 2 months, Gabriella became my person, the one I called when I panicked about labor, the one who took me maternity shopping despite my protests, the one who told me stories about Nico as a kid that made him seem human instead of untouchable. "He was the serious one," she said one afternoon over tea. "Always protecting everyone. Always trying to fix things. Papa used to say he was born middle-aged. He's very..." I searched for the word. "Intense. That's one way to put it." She smiled. "He's also been in love with you since that first night. He's just terrible at showing it. He barely knows me. He knows enough. She reached across the table, taking my hand. I know this whole situation is complicated. I know you didn't choose this. But Nico doesn't do anything halfway. If he's committed to you and this baby, he means it. For life. I wanted to believe her. But trust didn't come easy. Not when I'd spent most of my life alone. At 8.5 months pregnant, I was miserable. Nothing fit. My back hurt. My feet were swollen. And I was so tired of being pregnant that I could cry. Nico showed up at closing time like always, but this time he brought food. Thai, he said, setting containers on the counter. The good place. Extra spring rolls because I know you've been craving them. How did you? Gabriella told me. He started opening containers. Eat. I was too tired to argue. We ate in comfortable silence, and when I couldn't reach my feet to untie my shoes, he knelt down and did it for me without a word. You don't have to. I know. I want to. That night, as he helped me close up, I asked the question that had been weighing on me for weeks. What happens after the baby's born? He stopped sweeping. What do you mean? I mean, you've been here every day for 8 months. You've proven you're committed. But what happens when there's an actual baby? When it's not just theoretical anymore? He set the broom aside and came to stand in front of me. Then I'm still here. Every day. Every night. Whatever you need. And your family? The Russos? All of that? Is handled. His voice was firm. The Russos withdrew their demands 2 months ago. My father negotiated a new alliance. It's done. Just like that? Not just like that. It took work. But yes, it's done. He paused. You and this baby are my priority. Everything else comes second. I looked up at him. At this man who'd shown up every single day for 8 months, who'd asked for nothing except the chance to be present, and felt something crack open in my chest. Okay, I whispered. Okay? I believe you. The relief on his face was so profound it made my throat tight. He raised his hand like he was going to touch my face, then stopped, uncertain. I closed the distance myself, leaning into his palm. Serena. He breathed. Don't talk, I said. Just stay. So he did. 1 week later, I went into labor at 3 a.m., alone in my apartment above the shop. I called Nico, and he was there in 7 minutes, breaking every traffic law in the city. I've got you, he said, helping me down the stairs. We're going to be fine. We? I gasped through a contraction. We, he confirmed. You, me, and this baby. We're a team now. And as we drove through the empty streets toward the hospital, his hand holding mine, I realized he was right. Somewhere between that first night and this moment, between anger and forgiveness, between fear and trust, we'd become something. Not a couple. Not yet, but a beginning. The hospital room was too white, too sterile, too bright for 3 a.m. I gripped the bed rail through another contraction, breathing the way the nurse had taught me in the birthing class I'd attended alone 3 weeks ago. Nico stood beside me, his hand on my back, steady pressure that helped somehow. You're doing great, he murmured. Don't patronize me, I gasped. You have no idea. The words cut off as another wave hit. When it passed, I sagged back against the pillows. My hair stuck to my forehead. I'd been in labor for 6 hours, and the doctor said I still had a ways to go. I should call Gabriella, Nico said, pulling out his phone. It's 3 a.m. She made me promise. He was already dialing. A moment later. Ella, it's time. Yeah, we're at Mercy General. Labor and delivery, room 304. A pause. She's doing amazing. Stubborn as hell, but amazing. I would have argued, but another contraction started, stealing my breath. Gabriella arrived 40 minutes later with coffee for Nico and ice chips for me, her baby with a sitter and her husband on his way to pick up my friends so I wouldn't be alone. "You called Lucia?" I asked between contractions. "Of course I did. You think we'd let you do this alone?" Gabriella squeezed my hand. "You're family now. That means showing up." By 6 a.m., my small hospital room was full. Lucia, Sophia, and Marie had all arrived, looking exhausted but determined. Gabriella had taken charge of managing everyone, sending people out for food or coffee or walks when the room got too crowded. Nico never left my side. At hour 9, when I was ready to give up, when the pain was so intense I couldn't think straight, he leaned close and whispered, "Remember what you said that first day? About not being fragile? You were right. You're the strongest person I've ever met. You can do this. I can't. You can. You will. And I'm right here." Matteo Valente was born at 7:23 a.m. on a Tuesday in late December, screaming loud enough to wake the entire floor. The nurse placed him on my chest, this tiny, perfect human with a shock of dark hair and the most beautiful face I'd ever seen. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think, could only stare at this miracle we'd made. Nico's hand trembled as he reached out to touch our son's head. "He's perfect. He is," I whispered, tears streaming down my face. "He really is." The next few hours passed in a blur. Tests and measurements and visitors. Antonio appeared briefly, took one look at his grandson, and had to step into the hallway because his eyes got suspiciously wet. Gabriella cried. My friends cried. Even Nico's voice cracked when he held Matteo for the first time. But eventually, everyone left. The room grew quiet, and it was just the three of us. I watched Nico pace with Matteo, this powerful man reduced to a gentle giant by 7 pounds of newborn. He hummed something in Italian, old and familiar, probably a lullaby his own mother had sung. "You're good at this," I said quietly. He looked up, surprise in his eyes. "At what?" "Being a father." "I haven't done anything yet." "You showed up, every day for 9 months. That's more than most people do in a lifetime." He came to sit on the edge of my bed, Matteo sleeping in his arms. I meant what I said that night, before he was born. "You and him, you're my priority. Everything else comes second. What about your family business? I'm stepping back, letting my father handle more, promoting people I trust." He looked down at Matteo. "I want to be present for this, for him, for you, not splitting my time between what I should do and what I want to do." The words hung in the air between us, weighted with meaning I wasn't quite ready to examine. "We should probably talk," I said, "about what happens next." "What do you want to happen?" It was the first time he'd asked instead of decided, the first time he'd given me complete control. I stopped, trying to find the words. "I want to go slow. I want to figure out how to be parents before we figure out how to be anything else. I want Matteo to have a father who's present and involved, not some distant figure who shows up for birthdays and Christmas." "Done." "Just like that?" "Just like that." His gray eyes were steady on mine. "Whatever timeline you need, whatever boundaries make you comfortable, I'm not going anywhere." The next few weeks proved he meant it. I moved back into my apartment above the shop, and Nico rented the unit next door. He showed up for every 2 a.m. feeding, every diaper change, every crying fit. He learned how to swaddle and burp and soothe better than I did. "You're a natural," Gabriella observed one afternoon, watching him rock Matteo while I finally got to eat a meal with both hands. "I'm terrified," he admitted. "Every single second. But also..." He looked down at our sleeping son. also the happiest I've ever been. I understood what he meant. This tiny human had taken over our lives completely. My flower shop ran on reduced hours. Nico's family business operated with him making decisions from my living room instead of an office downtown. Our entire world had contracted to this small space, these sleepless nights, this new rhythm we were finding together. 6 weeks postpartum, I was standing in my shop trying to make a simple arrangement when exhaustion finally caught up with me. My hands shook, my eyes burned. I couldn't remember if I'd eaten lunch. Okay, that's it. Lucia took the scissors from my hands. Go upstairs. Nap. I've got this. I can't just— You can and you will. Nico's up there with Mateo. They're fine. You need sleep. I trudged upstairs to find Nico on the couch, Mateo asleep on his chest, both of them breathing in sync. The sight made my chest ache in a way I didn't have words for. Hey, he said softly. You okay? Tired. I sank onto the other end of the couch. So tired I can't remember what day it is. It's Thursday. You slept 3 hours total last night. I counted. Stalker. Concerned father of your child. He shifted carefully, not disturbing Mateo. When's the last time you had a full night's sleep? Sometime in my second trimester, I think. He made a decision I could see forming in his eyes. Tonight, I'm taking night duty. All of it. You're sleeping in my place, and I'm staying here with him. You can't— I can. I will. This isn't negotiable, Serena. You're running on fumes, and that's not sustainable. I wanted to argue, wanted to insist I could handle it. But the truth was, I couldn't. Not alone. And he was offering something I hadn't had in 6 weeks. Rest. Okay, I whispered. That night, I slept for 11 hours straight in Nico's apartment next door. When I woke up, sunlight was streaming through unfamiliar windows, and I felt human for the first time in weeks. I found Nico and Mateo in my apartment, both looking exhausted, but alive. How was it? I asked, taking Mateo from his arms. Terrible. Amazing. I have no idea how you've been doing this mostly alone. He ran a hand through his disheveled hair. But also, I fed him twice, changed him 4 times, and got spit up on more than I thought possible. So we bonded. I laughed, the sound feeling foreign after weeks of stress. You're a mess. I'm a dad. He grinned. There's a difference. 3 months after Mateo was born, the Russo family made their move. I was closing the shop when 2 men I didn't recognize walked in. Not customers, not vendors. The way they moved, the way they positioned themselves, blocking the door. I knew immediately something was wrong. Serena Blackwell? The taller one smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. We're closed. We're not here to buy flowers. He pulled out a phone, showed me a photo. It was taken from across the street. Me, carrying Mateo into the shop this morning. Nice baby. Be a shame if anything happened to him. Ice flooded my veins. My hand moved instinctively to the panic button Nico had installed under the counter 3 months ago. The one I'd thought was overkill. I pressed it. What do you want? I kept my voice steady, even as my heart raced. A message for Valente. Tell him the Russos don't forget. Tell him there are consequences for breaking promises. The man stepped closer. Tell him his son is— The door exploded inward. Nico moved like violence personified, all controlled fury and precise action. The 2 men didn't stand a chance. Within seconds, they were on the ground, Nico's security team flooding in behind him. He came straight to me, his hands on my face, checking me for injuries. Are you hurt? Did they touch you? No, I'm fine. But they threatened Mateo. My voice broke. His expression went cold, colder than I'd ever seen. He turned to the men now being restrained by his team. Take them. I want to know everything. Who sent them? What they were told. Everything. Then he pulled me against his chest, and I let myself shake. "This is why," he said quietly, fiercely. "This is why I insisted on security, why I wanted you somewhere safer. Because my world touches you now, touches our son, and I will burn down anyone who threatens you." I pulled back to look at him. "They said the Russos don't forget. Let me handle it." "No." I gripped his shirt. "No more secrets. No more handling things without telling me. If we're doing this, if we're raising Mateo in your world, then I need to know everything." He studied my face for a long moment, then nodded. "Okay, come on." He took me to a meeting I wasn't supposed to witness. His father's office downtown. The entire Valente family seated around a conference table. Antonio at the head, Nico at his right hand, and me, holding Mateo, in the back of the room where I could watch and listen. Antonio laid out the situation. The Russos' attempts to undermine their business. The threats against family members. The escalating tension that was threatening to erupt into full-scale war. "We need to respond," one of Nico's cousins said. "Show them we won't be pushed." "We need to be smart," Antonio countered, "not reactionary. They threatened my son." Nico's voice was quiet, lethal. "That's not something I can ignore. And you won't, but we respond with strategy, not emotion." I watched Nico struggle with that. Watched him wrestle with the parts of himself that wanted blood against the parts that wanted peace. Then he looked at me, at Mateo sleeping in my arms, and something shifted in his expression. "I want this ended," he said, "permanently. No more threats, no more games. I don't care what it costs." Antonio nodded slowly. "Then we negotiate. One final time, but from a position of strength." What followed was 2 weeks of tense meetings, mediators, lawyers, old family friends calling in favors. I wasn't involved in most of it, but Nico briefed me every night, kept me informed of every development. Finally, a deal was reached. Financial concessions on both sides, shared territories in neutral zones, and most importantly, a complete and total agreement that families were off limits. No more threats. No more targeting children or spouses. The night the papers were signed, Nico came to my apartment looking exhausted, but relieved. "It's done," he said, collapsing onto my couch. "Really done this time." I sat beside him, Mateo asleep in the bassinet nearby. "How do you feel?" "Like I can finally breathe." He turned to look at me. "Like maybe we can have a normal life now. Or as normal as it gets. What does normal look like for us?" It was the question I'd been avoiding for months. The thing we'd been dancing around since Mateo was born. He took my hand, his thumb tracing circles on my palm. "I don't know, but I'd like to find out, if you're willing." My heart raced. Willing to what? To try, to see if this... He gestured between us. Could be more than just co-parenting, more than just convenience. And if it doesn't work, then we figure it out, together, as a team, like we've been doing. He paused. "But I think it could work. I think we could be amazing together if you gave us a chance." I looked at this man who'd shown up every single day for 10 months, who'd proven his commitment over and over, who'd negotiated peace with his enemies so our son could grow up safe. "Okay," I said quietly. "Okay? Let's try. Let's see what this could be." His smile was like sunrise, slow and warm and full of promise. He leaned in, giving me time to pull away. And when I didn't, his lips met mine in a kiss that was nothing like that first night. That had been passion and urgency and desperation. This was tender, patient, full of all the things we hadn't said yet, but both felt. When we pulled apart, Mateo chose that moment to wake up with a cry. We both laughed, The moment broken, but not ruined. And Nico went to pick up our son while I watched and realized something. I was falling in love with him. Not the version from that first night. Not the powerful Mafia heir or the man who'd canceled a wedding. This version. The one who changed diapers at 3 a.m., who learned to make formula bottles, who sang Italian lullabies and read parenting books and asked questions instead of making assumptions. This version, I could love. This version, I did love. 6 months after Matteo was born, my flower shop was thriving in ways I'd never imagined. The security measures Nico had insisted on, cameras, reinforced doors, panic buttons, had initially seemed excessive. Now they were just part of the landscape, as familiar as the coolers and cutting tables. Matteo slept in a bassinet behind the counter while I worked, a setup that horrified some customers and charmed others. I'd learned to make arrangements one-handed, to soothe a crying baby while explaining rose varieties to clients, to exist in 2 worlds at once. "He's getting so big," Mrs. Chen observed during her weekly visit, peering at Matteo with the kind of grandmother energy that made my chest ache. My own parents had died when I was 20, and I'd been alone since. But slowly, this neighborhood, these customers, Nico's family, they were becoming mine. 6 months next week, I said, trimming baby's breath for her arrangement. He's already trying to crawl. And his father? How is that situation? I smiled despite myself. Complicated, but good. Complicated didn't begin to cover it. Nico and I had been, whatever we were, for 4 months now. Not quite dating, not quite just co-parenting. Something in between that had no clear definition but felt right anyway. He still lived next door. Still showed up every evening to help with Matteo. But now he also stayed for dinner sometimes. Brought me coffee in the mornings the way I liked it. Left notes on my counter when he had to travel for business. Back tomorrow. Miss you both. The "you both" always made something flutter in my chest. We hadn't slept together since that first night. We'd kissed a handful of times. Soft, tentative things that held promise but never pushed. But that was it. Like we were both afraid of rushing into something that might break what we'd built. "Take your time," Gabriella had advised during one of our weekly coffee dates. "You're building a foundation. That's more important than anything else." But sometimes, late at night when Matteo was asleep, and I could hear Nico moving around in his apartment through the thin walls, I wondered what we were waiting for. The question answered itself on a Wednesday in early summer. I was closing up when Nico walked in carrying takeout from the Thai place and looking troubled. "What's wrong?" I asked immediately. "We need to talk." Those 4 words never led anywhere good. I locked the door, flipped the sign, and followed him upstairs where Matteo was napping in his crib. "My father wants to retire," Nico said, setting the food on the counter but not opening it. "He's turning 70 next month, and he's done. He wants out. That's good, right? He's earned it. It means I'll be taking over the family business, all of it." He ran a hand through his hair, a tell I'd learned meant he was stressed. "It means more responsibility, more time away, more danger." "Okay." I leaned against the counter, trying to process. What does that mean for us? I don't know. That's what I need to figure out. He came closer. "Because I want this. Want you. Want us to be a real family. But I also need to be realistic about what my life looks like. What I can offer." "What are you saying?" "I'm saying maybe you and Matteo should move. Somewhere safer. Away from all this." The words hit like a physical blow. "You want us to leave?" "I want you safe. There's a difference." "No." I shook my head. "No, you don't get to decide that. You don't get to push us away because you think it's better for us." "Serena?" "I've been alone my whole life, Nico. My parents died in a car crash when I was 20. I've had no one. No family. No support. And then you came along and... My voice broke. And you made me believe I could have more. That Mateo could have more. You don't get to take that away now because things are getting complicated. I'm trying to protect you. I don't need protection. I need partnership. I need someone who talks to me instead of making decisions for me. I moved closer, forcing him to look at me. You want to know what I need? I need you to stay. I need you to fight for this instead of running away. I've never run from anything in my life. Then don't start now. We stood there, inches apart, both breathing hard. And then he kissed me. Not gentle, not tentative. This was every bit of frustration and fear and want that had been building for months, unleashed in one moment. I kissed him back just as fiercely, my hands fisting in his shirt, pulling him closer. He lifted me onto the counter, stepping between my legs, and I wrapped around him like I could anchor him here, make him stay. When we finally broke apart, both gasping, his forehead rested against mine. I'm not running, he said quietly. I'm terrified. There's a difference. Of what? Of failing you. Of failing him. His hand moved to cup my face. Of you realizing I'm not worth the risk. You're an idiot, I said, but there was no heat in it. You've been proving your worth for 11 months. Every single day. How have you not figured that out yet? Because I come from a world that destroys beautiful things. And you and Mateo, you're the most beautiful things in my life. His thumb traced my cheekbone. I don't want to be the thing that ruins you. You won't be. Not if we do this together. He studied my face for a long moment, like he was memorizing it. Then he kissed me again, slower this time, sweeter, and I felt something shift between us. A decision being made, a future being chosen. When Mateo woke up crying, we pulled apart, both smiling, and Nico went to get our son while I finally opened the takeout containers. So, I said as he settled on the couch with Mateo, what's the plan? I take over the business, but I delegate more. Hire people I trust. Create boundaries between work and family. He looked at me. And you and Mateo stay here. With me. As a family. Define family. However you want to define it. I'm not pushing for marriage or... He stopped. Unless you want that. In which case we can talk about it. I thought about his canceled wedding. About how he'd chosen me over duty 11 months ago. About every evening since then. Every diaper changed. Every feeding at 3 a.m. Every moment he'd chosen to show up. I don't need a wedding, I said carefully. But I need commitment. I need to know you're all in. I'm all in. Have been since the moment I saw those ultrasound pieces. His gray eyes were steady on mine. You and him, you're everything. Everything else is just details. Over the next month, Nico transitioned into his new role as head of the Valenti family. I watched him navigate power struggles and old grudges. Watched him make hard choices with grace I didn't know he possessed. And every evening, without fail, he came home to us. How was your day? Became our ritual. Him asking me about the shop, about customers and flower orders, and Mateo's latest developments. Me asking him about the business in vague terms that let him share what he could without burdening me with details I didn't need. It's like being married, Gabriella observed one afternoon, watching Nico and me move around my small kitchen in perfect sync, making dinner while Mateo played on a blanket nearby. Except without the legal paperwork. We're taking it slow, I said, but even I could hear how unconvincing it sounded. You've been taking it slow for almost a year. At some point, it just becomes stalling. I didn't have a response to that. That night, after Mateo was asleep and Nico was getting ready to go back to his own apartment, I caught his hand. Stay, I said. He froze. Stay? Here. Tonight. Not... I felt my face heat. Not for anything. Just to sleep. Together. I'm tired of you being next door. A slow smile spread across his face. Yeah? Yeah. He stayed. We lay in my small bed, Mateo's crib within arm's reach, and talked about nothing important until we both fell asleep fully clothed and tangled together. When I woke up at 2 a.m. to feed Mateo, Nico was already up, warming a bottle, moving through the routine we'd perfected over months. Go back to sleep, he murmured. I've got this one. I watched him settle into the rocking chair with our son, watched the tenderness in his face as he fed Mateo, and felt my heart expand in a way that was almost painful. This was what I wanted. Not grand gestures or dramatic declarations, just this quiet partnership, this everyday choosing each other. When Mateo was 1 year old, we threw him a party in my shop. Gabriella had decorated with balloons and streamers. My friends had made food. Antonio had shown up with a ridiculously expensive gift that Mateo was too young to appreciate, but that made the old man's eyes suspiciously wet. Nico and I stood together, watching our son destroy his first birthday cake, getting frosting everywhere and laughing with pure joy. He's perfect, Nico said softly. He is. We should have another one. I choked on my punch. What? He grinned, clearly enjoying my reaction. Not right now, but someday. He should have siblings. You're assuming a lot, I said, but I was smiling. Am I wrong? I looked at him, at this man who'd become my partner in every way that mattered, and realized he wasn't. No, I admitted. You're not wrong. His hand found mine, fingers interlacing. Good. That night, after everyone had left and Mateo was asleep, exhausted from his party, Nico pulled something from his pocket. A small box. Before you panic, he said quickly. This isn't what you think. Or maybe it is. I don't know. I'm terrible at this. I stared at the box, my heart racing. I know we said we'd take things slow. I know we agreed not to rush. But Serena? He opened the box, revealing not a ring, but a key. Move in with me. You live next door. I bought a house, 3 bedrooms, a yard, room for Mateo to play, room for... He stopped, cleared his throat. Room for more, if we decide that's what we want. I'm not asking you to marry me. Not yet. But I'm asking you to build a life with me. A real one. Not 2 apartments and careful boundaries. Something more. I took the key from the box, feeling its weight in my palm. When did you buy a house? 3 months ago. I've been fixing it up. Gabriella's been helping. He looked almost nervous, an expression I rarely saw on him. If you hate it, we'll find something else. But I thought, I hoped. I kissed him, cutting off his rambling. When I pulled back, I was smiling. Show me. The house was perfect. Not too big, not ostentatious. Just a beautiful craftsman-style home in a quiet neighborhood with good schools and a yard where Mateo could learn to walk. The master bedroom has an ensuite, Nico was saying, leading me through rooms I could already picture our life in. And this room could be Mateo's. The 3rd bedroom could be a nursery, or an office, or whatever you... I grabbed his hand, stopping him. It's perfect. Yeah? Yeah. I stepped closer. And I don't want to wait. Wait for what? I took a breath, gathering courage. For this. For us. We've been dancing around it for over a year. But I love you, Nico. I'm in love with you. Have been for months. And I don't want to keep pretending we're just co-parents or friends or whatever we've been calling this. His expression transformed, going soft in a way that made my chest ache. Say that again. I love you. He kissed me like he'd been waiting his whole life to hear those words. Like I'd given him something precious he'd never expected to have. When we finally came up for air, he said, "I love you too, so much it terrifies me." Good. We can be terrified together. We moved into the house 2 weeks later. Gabriella organized everything, bossing movers around while Matteo napped in his new room, and I tried not to cry at how quickly my life had changed. "You okay?" Nico asked, finding me standing in the middle of our new living room surrounded by boxes. "Yeah, just, this is real now." "Is that bad?" "No, it's perfect. It's everything I didn't know I wanted." That night, we made love for the first time since that storm over a year ago. It was different this time, not desperate or urgent, slow and tender, and full of all the things we'd learned about each other in the months between. Afterward, lying tangled together in our bed in our house, with Matteo sleeping down the hall, Nico said, "Marry me." I propped myself up on an elbow to look at him. That's not how proposals work. I know, but I'm asking anyway. Marry me, Serena. Make this official. Let me spend the rest of my life showing you how committed I am. You've been showing me for over a year. Then let me keep showing you, with a ring and a ceremony and paperwork that makes it legal. He tucked a strand of hair behind my ear. I want you to be my wife. I want Matteo to grow up seeing what a real partnership looks like. I want more kids with you. I want everything. I thought about that first night, about the ultrasound I'd torn up, about every evening he'd shown up at my shop, every diaper he'd changed, every moment he'd chosen us. "Yes," I said. "Yes. Yes, I'll marry you, on one condition. Anything. We do it our way. Not a huge wedding. Not a family spectacle. Just us and the people who matter." He smiled, that slow, warm smile that I'd fallen in love with. Deal. We got married 3 months later in the backyard of our house. Small ceremony, close family and friends. Matteo toddling between us in a tiny suit, carrying our rings on a satin pillow with Gabriella's help. When it was time for vows, Nico pulled out the pieces of the ultrasound I'd torn up over a year ago. They'd been preserved in resin and set in a gold frame. "You tore this up thinking I'd choose someone else," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "But that afternoon, standing in your shop surrounded by flowers, I found the only piece that mattered. You. Him. Us." I was crying. Everyone was crying. Even Antonio had to turn away. "I choose you," Nico continued. "I chose you then, and I choose you now. And I'll choose you every single day for the rest of our lives." My own vows were simple. You showed up. Every single day you showed up. And you taught me that love isn't just feeling. It's action, it's choice, it's partnership. I love you, Nico Valente, and I promise to keep showing up too. When we kissed, Matteo clapped his chubby hands, and everyone laughed through their tears. The reception was simple. Food and music and dancing in our backyard under string lights. At one point, I found myself standing with Gabriella, watching Nico dance with Matteo, both of them laughing. "You did good," she said. We both did. I smiled. All of us did. He's different now. Softer. Happier. She squeezed my hand. "Thank you for giving him this, for giving all of us this." That night, after everyone had left and Matteo was finally asleep, Nico and I stood in our bedroom, still in our wedding clothes. "So," he said, "we did it. We did. Any regrets?" I thought about the journey, the fear and uncertainty, the slow building of trust. The choice to stay when leaving would have been easier. Not a single one. He kissed me, and I tasted promise and forever, and knew that whatever came next, whatever challenges or joys or complications, we'd face them together. The way we always had. The way we always would. 2 years into our marriage, I stood in the kitchen of our home, hands braced on the counter, fighting the nausea that had become my constant companion for the past month. "Mommy sick?" Mateo asked from his high chair, his dark eyes, so like his father's, wide with concern. "Mommy's fine, sweet pea," I managed, though my stomach disagreed. "Just a little tired." The front door opened, and Nico's voice called out, "I'm home!" Mateo squealed with delight as his father appeared, already reaching for him. Nico scooped our son up with practiced ease, pressing kisses to his dark curls while Mateo giggled and babbled about his day in the toddler language only we could interpret. "How are my two favorite people?" Nico asked, his gaze finding mine over Mateo's head. "3," I corrected quietly. He froze. "3?" I pulled the positive pregnancy test from my pocket, the one I'd taken that morning, the fourth one just to be sure. 3. The joy that transformed his face made my chest ache in the best way. He set Mateo down carefully, then crossed to me in 3 long strides, pulling me into his arms. "You're sure?" "I have 4 tests that say yes. Doctor's appointment is scheduled for next week to confirm, but..." I smiled against his chest. "Yeah, I'm sure. We're having another baby." He said it like he was testing the words, making them real. Then he pulled back to look at me, his hands cradling my face. "How are you feeling? Are you okay? Do you need anything?" "I'm fine, nauseous, exhausted, but fine." "We should celebrate. I'll call Gabriella and my father and..." "Wait." I caught his hands. "Let's just keep it between us for a little while. I want to savor this before it becomes a whole family thing." Understanding softened his expression. "Of course. Whatever you need." That night, after Mateo was asleep, we lay in bed talking about the future. Names and nursery colors and how we'd tell Mateo he was going to be a big brother. "He'll be almost 3 when the baby comes," Nico mused, his hand resting on my still flat stomach. "Old enough to understand, but young enough that he won't remember life without a sibling." "You sound like you've been reading parenting books again. Gabriella's been sending me articles." He grinned, unrepentant. "I want to do this right." "You did it right the first time. You'll do it right again." The pregnancy progressed smoothly for the first few weeks. Then the morning sickness hit with a vengeance that made my first pregnancy seem easy in comparison. "This is different," I told the doctor during my 8-week appointment. "With Mateo, I had some nausea in the mornings, but this is all day, every day. Could be hormone levels are higher this time," Dr. Morrison said, making notes. "Or..." She paused, studying the ultrasound screen. "Or it could be this." "What?" Nico was on his feet immediately, moving to where he could see the screen. 2 heartbeats. Dr. Morrison smiled. "Congratulations. You're having twins." The room tilted. Twins. 2 babies. I looked at Nico, whose expression had gone from concern to shock to something like awe. "Twins," he breathed. "We're having twins." "Twins," I echoed faintly. Dr. Morrison printed out the ultrasound images, 2 tiny beans side by side. "Everything looks good. Both babies are measuring right on track. We'll monitor you closely, of course. Twin pregnancies require more care, but you're healthy and young. I see no reason for concern." In the car on the way home, Nico kept glancing at the ultrasound photo propped on the dashboard. "Twins," he said again. "You're going to wear that word out. I can't believe..." He shook his head. 2 more. Mateo's going to have 2 siblings. We're going to need a bigger house. Or we could add on. 3rd floor, more bedrooms." He was already planning. I could see it in his eyes. "Maybe expand the yard. Get a swing set." "Slow down. We have 7 months to figure it out." But there was no slowing Nico down once he had a project. By the time I hit my 2nd trimester, he'd already hired contractors to add a 3rd floor to our house. Gabriella was in heaven, planning not one but 2 nurseries, a compromise after I'd vetoed her suggestion of a single shared room with matching cribs. They're individuals, I'd insisted. They should have their own spaces. But they're twins! The matching everything will be so cute. Ella, I love you, but no. Mateo adjusted to the news of impending siblings with the adaptability of a toddler. He'd pat my growing belly and announce, "My babies," to anyone who would listen, which Nico found endlessly adorable. "Our babies," I'd correct gently. "My babies," Mateo would insist, and Nico would laugh while I rolled my eyes. At 20 weeks, we found out we were having girls. "Twin girls," Nico said, staring at the ultrasound screen where our daughters were clearly visible, already looking like they were holding hands. "Dio, Serena, we're going to have 3 kids. 2 of them girls." "Are you okay?" I asked, because he'd gone pale. He swallowed hard. "I'm going to need to expand security and install a better alarm system, and maybe bars on the windows. They're babies, Nico, not prisoners. They're my daughters. There's a difference." Gabriella thought this was hysterical. Wait until they're teenagers. He's going to lose his mind. But watching Nico with Mateo, seeing how gentle he was despite his tough exterior, I wasn't worried. He'd be just as wrapped around our daughter's fingers as he was around our son's. The 3rd trimester was rough. Carrying twins meant everything was amplified. The exhaustion, the back pain, the general discomfort of being heavily pregnant. By 30 weeks, I was huge and miserable and ready to be done. "I'm sorry," Nico said one evening, massaging my swollen feet while I lay on the couch. "I did this to you. We did this together, and I'd do it again." I paused, but maybe not immediately. He laughed. "Understood. 3 kids is plenty." "3 kids is insane," I corrected, "but it's our insane." Mateo chose that moment to appear with his favorite book, climbing onto the couch next to me and accidentally elbowing one of the babies through my belly. "Ow, buddy. Careful." "Sorry, Mommy." He patted my stomach. "Sorry, babies." One of the twins kicked back, and Mateo's eyes went wide. "They kicked me." "They're saying hello," Nico said, abandoning my feet to scoop Mateo up. "They'll be here soon, and then you'll get to meet them properly." "When?" "Soon," I promised. Though soon still felt like forever when you were this pregnant. The twins arrived 2 weeks early, because of course they did. I woke at 3 a.m. to my water breaking, and Nico immediately went into crisis mode, checking hospital bags and car seats, and calling my doctor while I tried to breathe through the first contractions. "It's too early," he was saying into the phone. "They're not due for 2 more weeks." "Nico," I managed between contractions. "Twins often come early. It's fine." "How can you be so calm?" "Because one of us needs to be, and it's clearly not going to be you." Gabriella arrived to stay with Mateo, who was still asleep, and blissfully unaware that his sisters had chosen the middle of the night to make their entrance. "Go," she ordered. "I've got him. Keep me updated." The labor was faster than with Mateo, but somehow more intense. 2 babies meant twice the work, twice the pressure, twice the pain. "You're doing amazing," Nico kept saying, his hand in mine, his other hand stroking my hair. "So amazing. I love you so much." "I'm never doing this again," I gasped. "Whatever you want, anything you want, just breathe." Sofia Lucia Valente was born first at 6:47 a.m., screaming loud enough to wake the entire maternity ward. Elena Rose Valente followed 3 minutes later, quieter but no less determined. They placed both babies on my chest, one on each side, and I looked down at these 2 tiny, perfect humans we'd made and couldn't stop crying. "They're beautiful," Nico whispered, his voice thick. "You're beautiful. You're all so beautiful." The next few hours were chaos. Nurses and doctors checking the babies, making sure everything was okay, feeding attempts and measurements and tests. Nico never left my side, moving between me and our daughters with practiced ease. When we finally had a quiet moment, just the four of us in the hospital room, he sat on the edge of my bed holding Sophia while I held Elena. "We did it," he said softly. "We did." 3 kids. 3 kids, I agreed. "We're officially outnumbered." He laughed, the sound full of wonder and joy. I wouldn't have it any other way. Matteo met his sisters the next day, Gabriella bringing him to the hospital despite visiting hours, because nobody said no to a Valente. He approached the bassinet cautiously, clearly intimidated by these tiny creatures. "Matteo, meet your sisters," I said, "Sophia and Elena." "They're small," he observed. "You were small once, too," Nico assured him. "They'll grow. Can I hold one?" We settled him carefully in the chair, Nico supervising closely, and placed Sophia in his arms. Matteo stared down at her with such intense concentration that I had to bite back a laugh. "Hi, Sophia," he said seriously. "I'm your big brother. I'm going to protect you." Nico's hand found mine, squeezing tight, and I knew he was fighting the same rush of emotion I was. This was our family. Messy and loud and beautiful and ours. Coming home with twins was an adjustment. Nico had insisted on hiring a night nurse for the first month, which I'd initially resisted, but quickly came to appreciate when 3 a.m. meant 2 babies needing to be fed simultaneously. "I thought 1 newborn was hard," I said one morning, zombie walking through the kitchen in search of coffee. "This is a whole different level." "Go back to bed," Nico said, appearing with Sophia in one arm and Elena in the other. "I've got them. The nurse is here. You need rest." "I need to function." "You are functioning. You're incredible. But you also pushed 2 humans out of your body 3 weeks ago. Rest." I was too tired to argue. I went back to bed and slept for 4 hours straight, waking to find Nico still managing both babies while Matteo played nearby, helping by bringing diapers and talking to his sisters. "You're magic," I told him. "I'm terrified," he corrected. "But I'm here. We're figuring it out together." And we were. Slowly, chaotically, exhaustingly, we were figuring it out. The girls developed their own personalities quickly. Sophia was the louder one, demanding and fearless. Elena was quieter, more observant, but no less determined. Matteo took his role as big brother seriously, always wanting to help, to protect, to be involved. "My babies," he'd still say, even as they grew from newborns into infants. "Our babies," I'd correct. "My babies," he'd insist, and Nico would grin while I shook my head. On the twins' first birthday, we threw a party in our expanded backyard. The construction was finally done. 3rd floor complete with 2 nurseries and a playroom. The yard now had a swing set and sandbox, and more toys than 3 kids could possibly need. Gabriella had, predictably, gone overboard with decorations. Antonio had brought gifts that would have funded a college education. My friends had supplied enough cake to feed an army. And I stood with Nico, watching our 3 children covered in frosting and laughing with pure joy, and felt my heart expand beyond what I'd thought possible. "Happy?" Nico asked, his arm around my waist. "So happy it scares me sometimes." "Why?" "Because this is everything. And the thought of losing it—" I stopped, couldn't finish the sentence. He turned me to face him, his hands on my face. "You won't lose it. We won't lose this. I promise you, Serena. This is forever." And looking into his eyes, I believed him. That night, after everyone had left and the kids were finally asleep, we collapsed on our bed fully clothed. 3 kids, Nico said. 3 kids, I agreed. We're insane. We're happy. We're both. He rolled to face me, his expression soft. I love our life. Our crazy, chaotic, beautiful life. I love you. I love you too. I reached for his hand, lacing our fingers together. Thank you. For what? For showing up. That first day in my shop. And every day since. For choosing this. Choosing us. Easiest choice I ever made. And wrapped in his arms, our children sleeping down the hall, our house full of love and laughter and life, I knew he was right. This was everything, and it was ours. 5 years after the twins were born, our lives had settled into a beautiful rhythm that I sometimes had to pinch myself to believe was real. Mateo was 7 now, all gangly limbs and serious questions. He'd inherited his father's intensity and my tendency to overthink, which made for interesting dinner conversations. But why can't I go to Giovanni's house after school? He was asking as I packed lunches in the kitchen. All the other kids get to. Because Giovanni's parents haven't been vetted by security, Nico said calmly, not looking up from the business report he was reviewing at the kitchen table. That's not fair. Life isn't fair, but it is safe, which is more important. I shot Nico a look that said, "Let me handle this," and turned to our son. How about this? Giovanni comes here after school instead. You guys can play in the yard and I'll make those cookies you both like. Mateo considered this, his small face scrunched in concentration. With chocolate chips? With chocolate chips. Okay. He grabbed his backpack and headed for the door where his security detail waited to drive him to school. Manipulated by cookies, Nico observed once Mateo was gone. I've taught him nothing. You've taught him plenty, including how to negotiate, which is why he tried to convince you in the first place. He smiled, setting aside his report. Fair point. The twins chose that moment to barrel into the kitchen, Sophia in the lead as always with Elena right behind. Daddy! Sophia launched herself at Nico, who caught her with practiced ease. Can we have pancakes? You had cereal 20 minutes ago, but we're still hungry. Growing girls need sustenance, I said, already pulling out the pancake mix. But you're helping. Both girls cheered, climbing onto stools at the kitchen island while I supervised their enthusiastic but messy pancake making. This was our morning routine. Chaos and coffee and the comfortable rhythm of a family that had learned to work together. Nico's phone rang, the specific tone that meant business. He glanced at it, then at me. I have to take this. Go. We've got breakfast handled. He kissed the top of each girl's head, then mine, before disappearing into his office. Is Daddy busy? Elena asked, her voice softer than her twins. He's working, sweetie, but he'll be back soon. The business had grown over the years, expanding into more legitimate ventures while carefully divesting from the shadier aspects. Nico had made it his mission to build something his children could be proud of, something that wouldn't come back to haunt them. I want them to have choices I never had, he'd told me once. I want them to choose this life because they love it, not because they're trapped in it. By the time he emerged from his office, the twins were covered in flour and the kitchen looked like a disaster zone, but there were pancakes. Success? I asked, handing him a plate. Always. He accepted a pancake-sticky hug from Sophia and Elena before they ran off to play. Giovanni's been dealt with. I froze in the middle of cleaning up. Dealt with? Not like that. He rolled his eyes at my expression. I had his father's business checked out. He runs a legitimate accounting firm. No connections, no problems. Mateo can go over there after I meet the family. You're going to intimidate them, aren't you? Probably. But our son's safety comes first. It was this balance that defined our life now, the careful navigation between normalcy and the reality of who we were. What Nico's name meant in this city. Speaking of which, Nico said, finishing his pancake, I need to talk to you about something. The serious tone made me set down the dish towel. Okay. Antonio wants to retire. Completely this time. Move to the villa in Sicily. That's good, right? He's been talking about it for years. It means I'll be taking over everything, not just day-to-day operations, but the whole organization. He met my eyes. I wanted to make sure you're okay with that before I commit. I thought about the man I'd married, the father of my children, the person who'd proven over and over that he could handle power without being corrupted by it. Are you okay with it? I asked. I am. I think I've finally figured out how to do this, all of this, without compromising what matters. He pulled me close. But only if you're on board. I'm on board. I've always been on board. The transition happened over the following months. Antonio formally retired, moving to Sicily with fanfare and celebration. Nico stepped into the role completely, bringing with him changes that modernized while respecting tradition. He's good at this, Gabriella observed during one of our weekly coffee dates. Better than Papa in some ways, less stuck in the old ways. He's trying to build something different, and succeeding. She stirred her coffee thoughtfully. You know, when he canceled that wedding years ago, half the family thought he'd lost his mind. Now they all see it was the best decision he ever made. Only half thought he was crazy? I teased. The other half were too busy panicking about the Russo situation. She grinned. But it worked out. It all worked out. It had. The Russo family had eventually come around, especially after their own leadership changed hands. The new generation wanted peace, wanted legitimate business, wanted to move beyond the old grudges. It's like the whole world is growing up, I'd said to Nico after a particularly successful negotiation. We're all just trying to leave our kids something better than what we got, he'd replied. The shop was thriving too. I'd expanded to 3 locations, hiring managers I trusted while maintaining hands-on control over the original store. It was my haven, my creative outlet, the thing that was completely mine. Though, technically, Nico liked to point out, I'm your best customer. Because you buy flowers constantly. Because my wife makes the most beautiful arrangements in the city, and I like showing them off. He still bought roses. Every anniversary he'd show up with the same request. Red roses, for tonight. Just tonight. It was our tradition, a reminder of where we'd started. On our 5th wedding anniversary, he surprised me with a trip. Just the 2 of us, he'd said. 4 days in Tuscany. The kids will stay with Gabriella. 4 days without the kids? I'd been both thrilled and anxious. We'd never been away from them that long. 4 days to remember what it's like to be just us. Not Mom and Dad, just Serena and Nico. Tuscany was magical. Rolling hills and incredible food and quiet moments where we could just be together without someone needing something from us. This is nice, I said one evening, curled against him on the balcony of our villa as the sun set over the vineyards. We should do it more often. Annual tradition? Annual minimum. He kissed the top of my head. I love our kids, our life. But I also love this. Just you and me. 5 years married, I mused. 7 since that first night in the shop. Best storm of my life. It wasn't even that bad a storm. It was to me. I was supposed to be at the wedding venue, finalizing details. Instead, I found myself in a flower shop with the most beautiful woman I'd ever seen. He shifted so he could look at me. That was the night everything changed. I just didn't know it yet. When did you know? When I walked in to pick up Isabella's bouquet and saw you again. It was like everything clicked into place. Like my whole life had been leading to that moment. I thought about those ultrasound pieces, about how I'd torn them up thinking I'd lost him before I ever really had him. I almost lost all of this, I said quietly. No, I wouldn't have let you. Even if you'd run, even if you'd fought me every step of the way, I would have found a way back to you. He cupped my face. You and Mateo and the twins. You're my everything. Everything else is just noise. That's very romantic for a mob boss. Former mob boss. Current legitimate businessman and devoted family man. Current legitimate businessman who still has people who report to him. Details. We made love that night with the balcony doors open, the Tuscan air cool against our skin, and it was like that first night all over again, but better, deeper, with the weight of years and love and history between us. Afterward, tangled together in the sheets, Nico said, "Have I told you lately that you're the best decision I ever made?" Not since this morning. Slacking. Unacceptable. He propped himself up on an elbow. You're the best decision I ever made. Marrying you. Having a family with you. Building this life. You're not so bad yourself. High praise from my wife. We flew home renewed, reconnected, ready to dive back into the chaos of 3 kids and 2 careers, and a life that was never boring. The kids had missed us desperately, all 3 of them climbing over us the moment we walked through the door. "Never leave again," Sophia declared. 4 days felt like forever, Mateo added. Elena just held on to me and didn't let go for 20 minutes. "Told you they'd be fine," Gabriella said, but her smile was knowing. "But also, they definitely missed you." That summer, Mateo asked if he could learn about the family business. "I'm 7, he pointed out when I'd balked. I should start understanding what Daddy does. Nico and I had a long conversation about it that night. "He's too young," I insisted. "He's asking questions. We can either answer them honestly or let him imagine things that are worse than the truth." What if... I couldn't finish the thought. What if he chooses this life? What if we lose him to the family business the way Nico almost lost himself? "Then we guide him," Nico said gently. "We show him the good parts and the hard parts. We let him see what it really means. And then when he's older, we let him choose." So Mateo started spending Saturday mornings at Nico's office. Nothing dangerous. Nothing inappropriate. Just filing and organizing and learning how a legitimate business operated. "It's boring," he reported after the first week. "Most business is boring," Nico had replied. "The exciting parts are what people remember, but 90% is paperwork and meetings." That sounds terrible. It can be. But it's also building something, creating opportunities, taking care of people who work for you. I watched Mateo absorb this, watched him start to understand the weight of responsibility that came with the Valenti name. He was growing up. They all were. The twins started kindergarten that fall, both in the same class despite my initial plan to separate them. "They need each other," the school counselor had advised. "Separating twins can be traumatic. Let them stay together." So Sophia and Elena navigated kindergarten as a unit, Sophia making friends for both of them, while Elena quietly observed and then provided thoughtful commentary later. "They're like 2 halves of one person," Gabriella observed. "Sophia's the heart, Elena's the head." "They're both entirely themselves," I corrected. "They just express it differently." 8 years after that first night, on a quiet Tuesday evening, I found Nico in his office staring at something on his desk. "What's that?" I asked. He held it up. The ultrasound photo from the twins. The one from our 6-week appointment when we'd found out there were 2. I was thinking about how we got here, all the little moments that led to this life. I came to stand behind him, wrapping my arms around his shoulders. "Any regrets?" "Not a single one. You?" "Not a single one." He pulled me around to sit in his lap, the photo still in his hand. "Thank you." "For what?" "For taking a chance on me, for letting me prove myself, for building this incredible life with me." He set the photo down carefully. "For loving me, even when I didn't make it easy." You made it easier than you think. You showed up. Every day you showed up. That's all I ever needed. We sat there in comfortable silence, the house quiet around us. Mateo doing homework upstairs, the twins playing in their rooms, our family, our life. We should have another one, Nico said suddenly. I pulled back to look at him. Are you insane? We have 3 kids. 3 busy, demanding, wonderful kids. I know, but I was thinking, no. I was laughing now. No more babies. 3 is perfect. Our family is perfect exactly as it is. He studied my face for a long moment, then smiled. Okay, 3 kids. 1 incredible wife. 1 beautiful life. 1 beautiful, chaotic, perfect life. That works too. Later that night, after the kids were in bed and we were getting ready for sleep ourselves, Nico pulled out a small box from his nightstand. What's this? Open it. Inside was a pendant. Gold. Delicate. And embedded in resin in the center were those original ultrasound pieces I'd torn up almost 9 years ago. The ones he'd preserved and given to me at our wedding. Nico, I had them made into a necklace, so you can carry it with you. Carry the moment everything changed, the moment we became a family. I couldn't speak past the emotion clogging my throat. He took the necklace from the box and fastened it around my neck. Perfect, he murmured. I touched the pendant, feeling the history it represented. One night, one storm, one choice that led to everything. I love you, I whispered. I love you too, forever. And standing there in our bedroom, in the house we'd built, surrounded by the life we'd created, I knew he meant it. This was forever. This was everything. This was ours.